students, welcome. Myself Dr. Roshni, your OBGYN faculty. So today we are going to talk about malpositions and malpresentations. What is the difference between these two and what is the mechanism of labor? Normal mechanism of labor we have all learned, isn't it? So now let us read about the abnormal labors. Firstly, malposition. What do you mean by malposition? Malposition is, last class you have learned, what is a position? It is the denominator relation to that of the fetal different. Now you have learned about position, isn't it? What is position? It is the relationship of the denominator to that of the different quadrants of the pelvis, isn't it? So occipito-anterior, occipito-lateral, occipito-posterior, right, left, these are the different positions, isn't it? Based on that, what we have told, what is normal? Only left occipito-anterior or transverse is normal because they alone spontaneously progress, okay? Or occipito-anterior is only normal. If it becomes posterior or direct occipito-posterior, then it becomes malposition, okay? This is what is malposition, different positions of the fetus, okay? If it breech becomes the presenting part, then it is called what? Malpresentations, okay? This is the basic difference. So now, among the different malpositions, occipito-posterior, okay? Occipito-posterior is the commonest malpositions, and among the different malpresentations, breech becomes the common. Other than breech, what else we have to know? You have to know that face can be there, okay? If face is there, that is also malpresentation. Face, brow, shoulders, cord or complex. What do you mean by complex presentation? If more than one part of the fetus is occupying on the internal os, okay? Presenting part is nothing but the one which occupies on the internal os, isn't it? If head, hand, cord, everything is lying over the internal os, then that becomes a complex presentation, okay? So now let us move ahead with the malposition. Of all which we told is the commonest one, occipito-posterior is the commonest malposition, isn't it? Here vertex only is the presenting part, but it is malposition because occiput is posterior. This will not progress normally as how we expect. So this becomes a malposition. That is why remember, position of the fetus with respect to the birth canal at the onset of labor is a critical to decide whether she will have vaginal delivery or no, whether you can suspect or you can anticipate complications in case of malpositions. So, knowing the position of the fetus is very important. So, now let us see how do we diagnose a case of malposition or occipito-posterior. Firstly, this is how the occipito-posterior is, isn't it? So, here you can see if this is the occiput, the posterior part it is there. Amongst the occipito-posterior, right occipito-posterior is the commonest one, okay? Of all the vertex presentation, 10% chance is there that occipito-posterior position can be there, okay? So, right occipito-posterior is common, whereas left occipito-anterior is very common and normal. In the posterior position, right occipito-posterior is the commonest one and the incidence is as high as 10%, okay? So, now 10% will have this right side occipito-posterior position. Here you can see fetal spine is in alignment or close to that of the maternal spine, isn't it? So, if this is the fetal spine and this is the maternal spine, they are in parallel or in alignment, very close. Whereas in occipito-anterior, it will be like this. Though it is parallel to that, but it is far, isn't it? So, in occipito-anterior, it is far or straight, far from the maternal spine. Whereas in occipito-posterior, it will be very close to that of the maternal spine, okay? So, fetal spine almost lies in line with that of the maternal spine. So, now you can see this is how the patient is lying down, isn't it? So, baby is like this in occipito-posterior position. You can see in the second photo also, isn't it? This is occipito-posterior. Here you can see there is infra-umbilical flattening on inspection. If this is the umbilicus, since the back is not round contour and not forming the lower part, so infra-umbilical flattening will be there, okay? Or sub-umbilical flattening. If they've given these findings, then you should think in terms of occipito-posterior position, okay? Sub-umbilical or infra-umbilical flattening, okay? And you can also, when you palpate, you can make this neck groove. You can see, now you can see here a neck groove. Whereas if it is occipito-anterior, it will be a round contour, isn't it? Like this smooth and round contour. Whereas in case of occipito-posterior, you can see there will be a small depression here because it is not a round contour. You can see the small depression. Best finding would be that infraumbilical flattening. As soon as you see on a patient, on an abdomen, there is infraumbilical sudden flattening in the photo, then you should think in terms of it is a occipito-posterior position. Okay. Next, coming to palpation. So in palpation, what you will feel? In fundus, definitely you will feel the breech only. There is no difference in that. Whereas, what will happen in your lateral grips? What will happen in lateral grips? Since it is in alignment with that of the maternal spine, you won't be able to feel the fetal spine on either side because it is in alignment with that of the maternal spine. So, with very difficulty, you may palpate only this the lateral border. So, palpation of the back of the fetus will be very difficult. Whereas, on either side, you can feel the fetal limbs. Okay. If you're feeling both the sides fetal limbs and you cannot feel exact round contour, smooth, uniform, round consistency is for black, isn't it? So, if you cannot feel this for the back of the baby, then it is in alignment with that of the maternal spine. That is what you should think. Okay. It will be like this. So, you will not be able to feel back on any of the lateral side. But limbs, irregular, no? So, limbs can be felt very easily. Okay. This is on your fundal and lateral grip. Coming to the pelvic grips, here you can feel that the head usually will be not engaged. It will be floating above. Okay. You can feel the head very much floating. You feel the deep flexed head. Okay. In second pelvic grip, you can feel the deep flexed head. Also, in first pelvic grip, you can feel just bitemporal diameter of the head will be there. So, bitemporal is less than that of the biparietal, isn't it? So, when you are holding bitemporal, you are holding like this for the fetus, isn't it? Now, you can see here, you will hold the smaller diameter. So, you will feel the head to be very small, isn't it? So, imagine if this is like this, you will feel you will hold the wider part of the fetus. That is, biparietal diameter will be held, isn't it? Near the occiput. So, biparietal will be larger. So, you will feel head to be big. Whereas, in case of occipito-posterior, you will be holding what diameter? Bitemporal diameter. So, this bitemporal diameter will be small. So, you will start feeling that the head is small. You are holding the sinciput of the baby. So, this sinciput will be smaller. And you can feel the deflexed head. Okay, that head is not engaged inside and it is deflexed in case of occipito-posterior position. Okay. Next, coming to auscultation. Where do you exactly find the auscultation? Usually in the spino-umbilical line, isn't it? Spino-umbilical line, you will find the auscultation. But nowhere here we are having the back of the baby. So, do we find here the auscultation? No, it will be deep in the flanks. Okay, usually either in the deep flanks or it will be in the center umbilicus. Okay, near the umbilicus. Either near the flanks or in the umbilicus. Near the umbilicus or midline in fact. In the midline or near the flanks. If you can find the FHS, then again you should think in terms of occipito-posterior position. Okay, this is how you will clinically assess the occipito-posterior position. Now you have done with the abdominal examination. Now let us see what you will find in the pelvic examination. When you do a pelvic examination, what do you feel in case of occipito-posterior? Since the occiput is posterior, as soon as you put your finger, what you can feel since it is a deflexed head, you will be feeling which frontal anale? You will be feeling the anterior frontal anale. You can see here, this is occipito-posterior, isn't it? So, what frontal anale is being felt? It is the anterior frontal anale that is felt, isn't it? So, the anterior frontal anale will be felt very easily. You can even feel the face, brow or the forehead, sinciput of the fetus, okay, because it is a deflexed head, okay. In such case, when you feel the anterior frontal anale very easily, then you will suspect a case of occipito-posterior position. And when you want to feel the posterior frontal anale, you have to go deep down. Then only you will feel the posterior frontal anale and you can feel the occiput, okay. Deep in the sacral fossa, you can feel the occiput. This is how you will know, okay. So, when you put your finger easily, you can feel the frontal anale and the anterior frontal anale. Based on the pinna direction, pinna will be directing towards the occiput. You will decide what is the frontal anale. So, pinna directs towards which frontal anale? It directs towards the posterior frontal anale. So, here the pinna is directing posterior frontal anale. Since you are feeling anterior frontal anale, then you will confirm this as occipito-posterior position. So this is how you assess clinically a occipito-posterior position. How you will come to your diagnosis based on inspection, palpation, auscultation and PV examination of a occipito-posterior position. So now somebody is having a occipito-posterior position. What is the mechanism of labor in them? That is what we are going to know. So as you have learnt in occipito-anterior, the same steps will be there. Okay, it will be engagement, descent, flexion, internal rotation, crowning, delivery of the head, restitution, external rotation and delivery of the fetus. Same thing. Engagement of the head when the biparietal diameter crosses the pelvic inlet, isn't it? Descent and flexion usually happens throughout. Descent and flexion. Because of uterine pressure, there will be descent and flexion. And what is internal rotation? The part which touches the pelvic floor first will rotate anteriorly. So this is internal rotation. Extension, delivery of the head by extension, crowning and delivery of the head. Remember, in normal delivery of the head is by extension. Whereas in abnormal labor, like in PACE or in case of PACE to pubis delivery, it need not be always extension. Okay, so this will change. Then will be your restitution because of untwisting of the neck. Then will be your external rotation because of internal rotation of the shoulders. And then finally, there will be expulsion of the fetus. Okay, these are the different steps. The steps remain the same. Okay, be it breech, whatever it is. So the steps almost remain the same. Only thing is the cardinal movement or the extension may change. Such things only will change. Okay. So now we have told you incidence of occipito-posterior position is how much? It is around 10%. In that, remember, 3/8, almost 90% of them rotate 3/8 of the circle anteriorly and become occipito-anterior. By the end of labor, they become occipito-anterior and deliver like a normal patient. Okay, of the 10%, almost 90% become occipito-anterior. Normally, what will be the amount of rotation? It is 1/8 of the circle, isn't it? It will be anterior, so it will rotate 1/8 and it will become occipito-anterior. Whereas, in case of occipito-posterior, instead of rotating 1/8, it will rotate 3/8 of the circle and it will become anterior, occipito-anterior, and then that is how the delivery would happen. Okay. So this is what happens in 90% of the cases. Okay, in favorable conditions. I'll tell you what are the favorable conditions. In unfavorable conditions, okay, what happens in unfavorable condition? Instead of rotating, this is the occipito-posterior, instead of rotating 1, 2, 3/8 of the circle, imagine it will only rotate 1/8 of the circle and remain still. Then what will it become? It will become transverse, isn't it? Sagittal sutures is in transverse plane, isn't it? So here it becomes a deep transverse arrest, as in this case. See, it will rotate only 1/8 of the circle and it will stop rotation. So here it becomes deep transverse arrest. Or if there is unfavorable conditions like no good uterine contraction, contracted pelvis, it will remain there only. Then it is called persistent occipito-posterior position. Okay, non-rotation can happen. It will just remain there only. Okay, or instead of rotating anteriorly by 1/8 of the circle, it will rotate posteriorly by 1/8 of the circle. Understood? So normally it rotates anteriorly by 1/8 of the circle or 3/8 of the circle. But instead of rotating anteriorly, if it rotates posteriorly, then what it will become? Direct occipito-posterior, isn't it? So as in this case, you can see it becomes direct occipito-posterior. So these are the three different mechanisms. If it doesn't end up having a 3/8 of the rotation. Okay. So let us repeat what are the three different mechanisms. Either it will become deep transverse arrest by rotating 1/8 of the circle anteriorly. These are the abnormal mechanism. Normally, usually it rotates how much? Normal rotation is around 3/8 of the circle, isn't it? But in case of deep transverse arrest, it rotates only 1/8 of the circle anteriorly. In case of persistent occipito-posterior, it will remain the same. Then what will happen? It is nothing but no rotation, isn't it? Here there is no rotation. Then comes what? Direct occipito-posterior. Okay, that is when instead of rotating, it is rotating 1/8 posteriorly. Okay, so this is what you have to remember. These are the three different abnormal mechanisms. 90% of the case, it rotates 3/8 of the circle anteriorly. Okay, this is what happens. Now, in case if it rotated only 1/8 anteriorly and caused deep transverse arrest, or it is persistent occipito-posterior, then they would not be having a successful vaginal delivery. But if it rotates 1/8 posteriorly, then what will happen? It can have a face to pubis delivery. You can see it is rotated posteriorly. Occiput is towards the direct posterior and face is direct anterior. So face is towards the pubis. So this delivery is called face to pubis delivery. Here how it will deliver? It will have flexion for some amount and then delivery of the head by extension. You can see the first, here you can see in occipito-posterior position, when it rotates posteriorly by 1/8 of the circle, occiput is directly towards that of the posterior position, whereas face is direct anterior. So face will hinge behind that of the pubic symphysis, and with further slight flexion there will be delivery of the vertex, and then once the head is delivered it will fall back, okay, like this extension, and then the face will be delivered. So this is called face to pubis delivery. Okay, this is how it will happen. But remember, in case of face to pubis delivery, or in that is happening in direct occipito-posterior position, and there is marked deflection of the fetal head. Okay, that is why there will be slight flexion and then extension on delivery of the fetal head. Then here you can see it occupies which diameter? It occupies almost the occipitofrontal diameter, isn't it? The occipitofrontal diameter is almost 11.5 centimeters, isn't it? Occipitofrontal. So it is one of the widest diameter. So this widest diameter is stretching the perineum. So here there will be very high chance of perineal injuries. What you have to remember here is this: the diameter that occupies is occipitofrontal. So that will stretch the perineum a lot, and then there will be very high chance of perineal tear. 3rd degree, 4th degree perineal tears and difficult extraction of the fetus. Okay, more chance of instrumental deliveries. So before concluding, we were talking about the favorable and unfavorable conditions, isn't it? So what are the conditions which favor the 3/8 rotation so that it will have a normal vaginal delivery? So the favorable conditions are a well-flexed head. If the fetus is getting well-flexed, it will rotate easily by 3/8 of the circle. And with good uterine contraction, roomy pelvis. There should be enough space for the fetus to rotate, isn't it? Roomy pelvis with good pelvic floor. If all these things are there, then there is high chance of having a 3/8 rotation and good delivery. It should be a small baby, roomy pelvis and good uterine contractions. In such case, there will be very high chance of having vaginal delivery by 3/8 of the circle. But the same thing, the unfavorable conditions are a deflexed head, isn't it? The head is deflexed, it will occupy a longer space, so it will not rotate easily. And uterine inertia, there is no good uterine contractions for it to go down and cause the flexion of the head, isn't it? Flexion is caused by the good uterine contraction, by lever mechanism, isn't it? And then the contracted pelvis, there is no enough space for the fetus to rotate and go anteriorly, and rigid pelvic floor, which is not helping in rotation. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, so this is what all is required for a favorable and unfavorable conditions. If they give you conditions like a roomy pelvis or good uterine contractions are there, then you can wait for a vaginal delivery. But if they give you CPD or if they say uterine inertia is there, in such case you may have to either augment the labor and decide. If it is a deep transverse arrest, then you have to decide on a cesarean section. Okay, so this is all about the malposition. Now let us move ahead with that of a malpresentation. So what is malpresentation? Other than vertex, if anything else is the presenting part, then that becomes a malpresentation. So what are we going to read today? We are going to read about the breech presentation, isn't it? So breech is one of the commonest malpresentation. So breech is one of the commonest. And remember, the incidence of breech presentation is as high as 25% by 28 weeks. Okay, in early preterms, extreme preterms, the incidence of breech is 25%, whereas 5% at 34 weeks. Okay, by 34 weeks period, it reduces to 5% and it reduces to 3% by term. Okay, so as the period of gestation increases, the breech will move up, whereas prematurity is one of the commonest reasons for having breech as the presenting part. Okay, so with all this, what you will remember, premature babies are high chance of having breech presentation. Okay, Next, coming to the different types of breach. So what are the different types of breach? Either complete breach or incomplete breach. So when the baby is in its universal flexion state, as you can see, all the fetal parts are flexed to one another, isn't it? So in such case, it is called as a complete breach. In which photo do they show complete breach here? Yes, it is a second photo. You can see the full limbs and hip joint, knee joint, everything is well flexed, and the neck also is well flexed. So this will make it as a universal flexion. Okay. Now, next coming to the incomplete breach. If any of this is extended, imagine the knee joint is extended, like in this case. If the knee joint is extended, then it becomes what? It becomes a frank breach. So which photo shows a frank breach? It is photo number 1, isn't it? So it is a frank breach. So what is footling presentation? If it is extended at hip and knee joint, as you can see here, it is extended at hip and knee joint, it becomes a footling presentation. What is knee presentation? If it is extended at hip and it is flexed at knee joint, so knee becomes the presenting part here, isn't it? So this becomes a knee presentation. You can put it to yourself and see. So in exam, you don't have to remember as such. So extension here is knee, extension here is footling. So when your foot has to be down, so what are the extension joints? And your knee has to be down, what are the extension joints? That is what you want to know. That's all. Okay. Next, coming to the predisposing factors for breach. As we have told, what? Prematurity is the prime cause, as high as 25% at 28 weeks, isn't it? So prematurity is the primary reason for breach presentation. Other than this, wherever the babies are small or big and there is excess liquor or low liquor in such cases, for example, like in multiple pregnancies and oligo and polyhydramnios, or if they have anything like uterine anomalies. So what are the uterine anomalies? If they have a septate uterus, bicornuate uterus, diadelphys uterus, in such cases, chance of having a breech presentation is very high. Okay. And other than this, uterine fibroids. Okay. Not congenital malformations per se. If they have uterine fibroids also. For example, lower segment is occupied by fibroid. In such case, breech would be the more common presenting part. Okay. Next. Fetal abnormalities. What are the fetal abnormalities? Like CNS malformations in anencephalus or neck masses is there, like a cystic hygromas. In such cases, there is very high chance. Since the neck mass is there, lower pole would not be enough for the fetus to sit there. So it will go, head will go to the wider fundus. So it will have better space. So in such cases, there is very high chance of having a breech presentation. Other than all these, if they have previous breech presentation, again they have very high chance of having breech presentation in this pregnancy. These are the common predisposing factors. Of all this, you have to remember is multiple pregnancy, oligohydramnios, and yes, prematurity is the most common. Next, coming to the diagnosis based on the pelvic grips. So, how will you diagnose the breech presentation? This is how normally a patient will have, isn't it? Head will occupy the lower pole and fundus will be occupied by the buttocks. So, this is normal. So, what happens in breech presentation? What we have shown in photo is a normal presentation, occipito-anterior presentation. But what happens in breech presentation? It is like this, isn't it? So, breech is in the lower pole. 3 important points to say it as breech presentation is, firstly, fundus. Fundal pole will have what? Fundus will be occupied by cephalic. Okay, head will be in the fundus. Head is in the fundus. Hard globular mass in the fundus. Second one is lower pole will be occupied by buttocks. Broad, irregular, soft and mass will be occupying in the lower pole. So, buttocks are in the lower pole. And lastly, how will you diagnose? What is the third step to diagnose? Is by FHS. So, FHS where you will hear in breech? In and around the umbilicus. Okay. Around the umbilicus, if you are hearing FHS, then you should confirm that it is breech presentation. Head is in the fundus, buttocks in the lower pole, and FHS is in the center or in the umbilicus, in and around the umbilicus. Then you should think in terms of a breech presentation. So before going into breech delivery per se, I want to tell you, whenever you diagnose a case of breech presentation, you don't have to panic to have a cesarean or how will you deliver this patient. There is another option that is called external cephalic version, isn't it? Here, if you do an external cephalic version, normal pregnancies with breech presentations at 35 to 37 weeks period of gestation, chance of having a successful vaginal delivery with head as a presentation is as high as 65%. So 65% chance of having breech presentation in labor can be reduced, isn't it? Failure is only around 35%. Whereas vaginal delivery is there, usually it has spontaneous delivery, partial or assisted breech delivery can be done. Okay, so if it is persistent as breech, you can do a vaginal breech delivery or total breech extraction, okay, or cesarean delivery. These are the different option modalities that you have. Now coming to the benefits of doing external cephalic version. Before going to vaginal or cesarean delivery, what are the benefits of having a external cephalic version? If you do a successful external cephalic version, then chance of having breech can be reduced during labor. And this will reduce indirectly cesarean section by 50% because primary with breech becomes a direct indication for cesarean, isn't it? So here you will reduce the chance of having cesarean by 50%. Also, morbidity due to breech. Morbidity means whenever there is a breech extraction, there is some amount of fetal distress. The Apgar values can never be 10 by 10 in case of a breech presentation, isn't it? Because the head is always having some amount of compromise because it is after coming head, isn't it? Then, what is the timing of doing external cephalic version? When do you want to do external cephalic version? Yes, you can do external cephalic version around 35 to 37 weeks period of gestation. So in case of primary gravida, you better do it by 36 weeks period of gestation. And for multi-gravida, you have to do it around 37 weeks period of gestation. What are the adverse effects or dangers of doing an external cephalic version? Premature labor, PROM, antepartum hemorrhage and cord accidents like cord prolapse or cord compression, cord entanglement and fetal distress. That is why every time you're doing a rotation, you have to check FHS every quarter the rotation, isn't it? So, premature labor, you only can induce labor. There can be rupture of membranes, antepartum hemorrhage, cord accidents. These are the commonest reasons why people avoid external cephalic version. And for whom you should not be doing a external cephalic version, if they have known case of antepartum hemorrhage, like for example, they have abruption, they have placenta previa, you should not do. If you have a cephalopelvic disproportion, then what is the point of doing external cephalic version? Anyways, there is a CPD, you cannot deliver the fetus, isn't it? In such case, again, you do not want to do. Or if it is a twin pregnancy or in a post-cesarean pregnancy, remember in any high-risk pregnancies, you generally would not prefer. Only in normal pregnancies, you would prefer to do a external cephalic version, okay? Next, going ahead with the conditions that are unfavorable for a breech delivery. Okay, for breech delivery, what are the conditions that you should look for? Firstly, fetal weight. Extremes of fetal weight, even a very low birth, very less than 1.5 2 kgs, it is very difficult because head will be big, the body will be small, body will come up, head will not come. So, extreme low birth or extreme big babies, both extremes of the weight, you should not be choosing for a vaginal breech delivery. Okay, unfavorable pelvis. So what happens in unfavorable pelvis? Like in case of a platypoid pelvis or an android pelvis, the breech would not have a successful vaginal delivery because it will not have enough time for the head to mount in the pelvis. So in case of platypoid or android pelvis, you generally avoid doing a vaginal breech delivery. And hyperextension of the head. This is called what? Stargazing head. As you can see, if the neck is hyperextended, the measurement will become mentovertical, which cannot occupy any part in the pelvis. It will not get down itself. So, hyperextended neck is called what? It is stargazing appearance. Okay, stargazing appearance fetus is there. Then also you avoid doing a vaginal breech delivery. Knee or footling presentation. Why in footling or knee presentation we are so much worried? Foot or knee will come out with dilatation of 3 to 4 centimeters itself. It will come out into the vagina, isn't it? Will the body be able to come out? No. Then after that, what will come? We have a cord prolapse. Foot prolapse, cord prolapse, these are the common complications. Remember, in case of footling, the chance of having cord prolapse is as high as 17%. So, 17% chance you have that you will lose the baby. So, nobody would prefer to do a vaginal delivery, isn't it? Footling presentation, or in case of complete breech, chance is 5%. whereas frank breech is less chance, that is as low as 0.5%. Next, if they have any obstetric comorbidities like high risk factors, obesity, or if they have any other previous LSCS, such comorbidities is there, then you would generally avoid, okay? And fetal compromise, if there is any IUGR babies, then also you would not be preferring to do a vaginal breech delivery. There is a scoring system to assess the condition favorable to have a breech delivery. It is called Zatuchny-Andros score, okay? ZA scoring, Zatuchny-Andros score. So there are 6 parameters in this which you have to remember. So what are those 6 parameters? They are parity, gestational age of the fetus, and previous breech delivery. Okay, previous breech delivery, chance of success is high. Estimated fetal weight and cervical dilatation and station of the head. If the Zatuchny-Andros score or ZA scoring is more than 4, then there is high chance of having vaginal delivery. If it is less, then you should try and avoid doing a vaginal delivery. Okay. Now, coming to the mechanism of labor in case of a breech presentation. Now, everything you rule out, now she can have a vaginal delivery. Okay. So, how will you conduct this vaginal delivery? What are the problems you will face and how will you come ahead with that? Okay. So, mechanism of labor can be divided from 3 stages. One is at the level of buttocks, how the mechanism will happen, then at shoulders, then at head. Okay. So, 3 stages you have to remember. But remember the steps remain the same. Engagement, descent, flexion. In case of head, here there is compaction. Okay. So the steps almost remain the same. Rotation, extension, delivery, everything remains the same. So you have to remember those basic steps. And then you have to imagine what will happen in that case of a breech. Okay. And one more thing that you have to remember for sure is never pull or push in case of a breech presentation. Do not pull from below, do not push from above. This will only cause extension of the fetal head and delivery of the fetal head to become more difficult. Okay. You should never pull or push in case of a breech delivery. Never push and never pull. Okay. Now coming to the mechanism of labor in breech. So in breech, what is the engaging diameter? Just like biparietal diameter in head, what is it here? It is engaging diameter is bitrochanteric diameter. Okay. Distance between the 2 trochanteric prominence. So bitrochanteric diameter, what is it approximately? It is approximately around 10 centimeters. When this bitrochanteric diameter, what is the common position in breech? It is right sacro-anterior. Sacrum is the denominator, right? So it is right sacro-anterior. In head it is left occipito-anterior, whereas in breech it is right sacro-anterior. Okay, right side is the breech. So if the breech is in right sacro-anterior, what will be the... So now this bitrochanteric diameter, which is in the right oblique plane, okay, right oblique diameter, which is approximately around 12 centimeters, bitrochanteric diameter is around 10 centimeters, will get inside the pelvis, then it is called breech is engaged, okay. So now breech will get engaged, then with good uterine contraction, there will be descent of the breech and there will be compaction, okay. Instead of having flexion as in case of head, here there will be compaction. So there will be descent and compaction. So there is engagement, descent and compaction. Next, what is the step? It is internal rotation, isn't it? So same rule applies. The part which touches the pelvic floor first will rotate anteriorly. So this anterior buttock will touch the pelvic floor first and it will rotate anteriorly by 1/8 of the circle. So then this anterior buttock will hinge. So what happens next is the internal rotation, isn't it? So the same rule applies. That is, the part which touches the pelvic floor first will rotate anteriorly by 1/8 of the circle. So anterior buttock will touch the pelvic floor first. Okay. So this will rotate anteriorly by 1/8 of the circle. And anterior buttock, you can see in this photo also that the anterior buttock is hinging behind the pubic symphysis, and then there is lateral flexion and delivery of the buttocks. This is how the buttocks will be delivered. Okay. Now, once the buttocks is delivered, it will rotate anteriorly and then the limbs will be delivered. Okay, this is how the lower limbs will get delivered. Normally, the limbs will get automatically delivered. But if the limbs are not getting delivered, this is the first stage, isn't it? First stage, along with the buttocks, limbs have to be delivered. So, if the limbs are not getting delivered, what is the maneuver that you will use? That is Pinard's maneuver, isn't it? So, P stands for Pinard's, P stands for popliteal fossa. So, popliteal fossa and P, isn't it? So, this both you can remember. So, Pinard's maneuver is for removing the limbs. So now let me explain you how the Spinat's maneuver will work. Okay. So you can see now the buttocks is like this. The buttocks have come out and limbs have not come out. That is what you are trying to remove. Limbs have not come out, isn't it? So along the buttocks, you will trace your hand. Then you will feel for the popliteal fossa. Then you will flex at the popliteal fossa and do lateral flexion. That time you can see the limbs or the foot is coming into your hand. So you will pull the foot in your hand and you pull it down. Okay, the same way the other foot also will come down. Okay, so let me repeat. You will trace along the buttocks, along the limb. Then you will feel for the popliteal fossa. You will flex at the popliteal fossa and then cause abduction. Okay, once you cause abduction, the foot will come to your hand. So you will grasp the foot in your hand and you will pull it down. Okay, this is how you will remove the fetal limbs. This is called what maneuver? Spinat's maneuver. P for popliteal fossa and P for Spinat's maneuver. This is how you should remember. This is in the first stage. First stage, the difficulty will be in removing the limbs, isn't it? So now once the limbs are coming out, never pull or push. We have already told you. Now the limbs have come out, you will make sure that the back is anterior. Okay, wherever is the position, you'll make sure that the back is anterior. Now, during this time, what will be happening? Internal rotation of the shoulders, and shoulders will get engaged, descent and internal rotation. So now your limbs have come out. Next, what will happen? The same thing will happen in the shoulders also. Now your shoulders, that is biacromial diameter or bisacromial diameter, which will occupy in the right oblique plane, that will start coming down. First is engagement, descent and then rotation, isn't it? So this is how the shoulders will deliver. Same steps, engagement, descent and rotation, internal rotation. During internal rotation of the shoulder, what will happen? The anterior shoulder will hinge behind the pubic symphysis and delivery of the posterior shoulder will happen first. Okay, so this is how normally it will happen. But remember, if it is not happening in this way, then what you will have to do? You will have to rotate it by 180 degrees like this, so that the posterior shoulder will come anteriorly and it will be below the pubic symphysis, and then that shoulder will be delivered easily. As you can see in this photo also, see, anterior shoulder is hinging behind and delivery is not happening. So you rotated it 180 degrees. So posterior shoulder came front, isn't it? So posterior shoulder came front and it came below the pubic symphysis. The basic mechanism is pubic symphysis is way above that of the lower shoulder. You can see lower shoulder is below that of the pubic symphysis. So when you rotate, it will automatically come below the pubic symphysis like this. So you will be able to extract the one shoulder and then automatically the other shoulder will come out. That is the basic concept. This method is called what? This method is called Lovesitz's maneuver. So in second stage, what will be the difficulty? Difficulty would be to deliver the fetal shoulders. Same way how your shoulders got internal rotation, it will hinge behind the pubic symphysis. Anterior shoulder will hinge behind the pubic symphysis. If it is not coming out, then you will rotate it by 180 degrees. Now the posterior shoulder came below pubic symphysis. You can see. So then a delivery of the shoulder will become easy. Make sure all the time the fetal back is anterior. Okay. You should make sure that the fetal back is anterior. Now next, going ahead with the third stage. So now this what happens? When the anterior shoulders are delivered, now this head will get engaged. So head is like this, isn't it? So biparietal diameter is in the right oblique plane. So this also is in right oblique plane, whereas anterior-posterior diameter is in the left oblique plane. So biparietal diameter is how much? Is around 9.5 centimeters. When it crosses the pelvic inlet, is called head is engaged. Head will get engaged when the shoulders are delivered. That is when head will get engaged. Same thing like in head, again here it will happen. Engagement, descent and flexion. Okay, head will get flexed. So and then there will be internal rotation. Here you can see that now when the internal rotation happens, occiput will hinge behind the pubic symphysis. Okay. Now the occiput is hinging behind the pubic symphysis and then the delivery of the head will happen by flexion. As you can see here, occiput is hinging behind the pubic symphysis and then delivery of the head is happening by flexion, isn't it? So now the baby will come out. So this is how normally it happens. So just like how we could not remove limbs, we used Spinat's maneuver. We could not remove the shoulders, we used Lovesitz's maneuver. Now we could not remove the head. What will we do? First thing we will do is Burns-Marshall technique, isn't it? So here what you will do? You will hold the fetal foot. Okay, fetal foot will be held in one hand and from the below you will do one complete extension over the abdomen. Okay, just like in the photo, you will do the extension and the fetus will come out. This is how normally the fetus will come out in Burns-Marshall technique. First, till you see the nape of the neck, you should allow the fetus to hang on its weight. This will cause good flexion of the fetal head and there will be descent. Till you see the nape of the neck, you should not do anything. Once you see the nape of the neck, you will hold the fetal limbs and you will cause hyperextension of the fetus. Okay, from complete fetus, hyperextension will be caused and then the fetus will come out. This is Burns-Marshall technique. Next would be what? Your Mauritius-Meliviet method. So here what will happen? Modification is you will not put the hand in the mouth of the baby. You will keep middle finger on the chin and 2 fingers on the malar prominence of the fetus. So now you will use this and make sure that the baby lies on your hand. Okay, the weight of the baby is on your hand and then you will flex the malar prominence. So when you flex the malar prominence, there will be flexion of the fetal head. As you can see, now I am pressing the malar prominence and there is flexion of the fetal head, isn't it? Then there will be easy extraction of the fetus. This is Mauritius-Meliviet method. And there is one more option that you can use, that is by using a Piper's forceps. Just like a normal forceps, but here the forceps will have long shanks. As you can see in this photo, they will have a long shank. It is a long forceps. You will put from the posteriorly, you will put the left blade first. Okay, then you will be able to extract the fetus out. Okay, first left blade and then right blade. That is how you will apply and you will be removing the fetus. Okay, by using Piper's forceps. So all that you have to remember is the names and technique of Burns-Marshall and Mauritius-Meliviet and Lovesitt's maneuver and Pinard's maneuver. Technique is also equally important. Okay. So here ends about the breech presentation. So now we have completed malposition and malpresentation. Let us do some quick MCQs. First one, which of the following is not associated with breech presentation? Hydrocephalus. Yes, I told you whenever there is CNS or fetal anomalies, when the head is big because of neck mass or head mass itself. So what happens in cystic hygroma in such cases? It will not be able to occupy the lower pole. So it will occupy the wider fundus, isn't it? So breech will be the common presentation. Placenta previa, again same thing. So lower pole has the placenta. So usually breech goes up. Big babies will not have breech presentation. And hydromnios, especially oligo and polyhydromnios, have breech presentation. So correct answer will be C. Next question. Which among the following is incorrect regarding the management of breech presentation? Okay. Pinard's maneuver is used for delivery of the after-coming head. Is it? Pinard's is used for what? It is used for removing the popliteal fossa or the fetal limbs, isn't it? Lower limbs. So this is wrong. First itself is a wrong answer. No push and pull technique is used in breech delivery. Yes, we have stressed on that. No push and no pull. Okay. Prague's maneuver used to deliver the occipito-posterior head of the breech. So what happens in occipito-posterior? As we have told you, what is the engaging diameter? It becomes occipitofrontal, which is almost how much? 11.5 centimeters, which will stretch the perineum widely. So when you give a good perineal support and help in the flexion of the fetal head, that is called as Prague's maneuver. Okay, that is Prague's maneuver. Then, elective cesarean section is indicated in footling presentation. Is it? Yes, definitely. Why in footling presentation we do elective cesarean? Why? Because 17% chance of having cord prolapse, isn't it? So that is why you want to do a elective cesarean. So the remaining 3 are correct. Next question. A 24-year-old primea gravida is brought to the hospital in labor. Okay. PV examination, anterior frontal inlay and supraorbital ridges could be felt. Okay. Let me show you. So they are feeling what? They are feeling anterior frontal inlay and supraorbital ridge, isn't it? So this makes what? Which among the following is most likely presentation? Yes, tell me. I was about to ask. So what is this? This is a supraorbital ridge. What is this? It's a bro presentation. It's a deflexed head. It's a flexed head. No, definitely not a flexed head. It's a face presentation. No, it's a bro presentation. So it is not a deflexed head. What is it called? A extended, isn't it? I guess I can show you in this photo itself. Head is what? Deflexed is some, flex is like this, deflexed is like this. So it is a extended head, isn't it? So here the correct answer will be bro presentation. Next question. A 28-year-old primea gravida at 40 weeks of gestation is brought to the labor room. she has breech presentation and Zattucini Andro score is more than 4. Okay, so it's favorable for vaginal delivery, isn't it? Then vaginal delivery was initiated, but now there has been arrest in the after coming head of the fetus. Okay, head could not be delivered. What would be the best management in such case? Okay, now for delivering the head, what are the manuals? That is what they are asking. Clidotomy. What is clidotomy? It is breaking of the clavicle bone. Okay, when you break this clavicle bone, especially where you do this in case of shoulder dystocia, not in case of a breech presentation. Zavanelli maneuver. Zavanelli maneuver is what, where all the techniques have been tried and still the fetal head could not come. Decapitation is not the option anymore. Okay, so we do Zavanelli method. So Zavanelli is push back the fetus inside and deliver the fetus by cesarean section. This is the last method. Okay, nobody does this anymore. So, but still I'm telling you, Zavanelli is push the fetus inside and do a cesarean and extract the fetus, especially in case of breech presentation. This is the last maneuver, not the best maneuver. Derson's incision. Derson's incision means in case of a cervical stiffness. Okay, if the cervix is not dilated and there is not been able to, in case of incomplete dilatation of the cervix. Okay, what happens in case of incomplete dilatation? Head might get stuck, isn't it? Breech came out because it can be compacted. Head could not be compacted, so it is not coming out. So you give an incision on that of a cervix. Okay, cervix, help in dilatation. That is called as Derson's maneuver or Derson's incision. Then Mauritius maneuver. This is the best method, isn't it? We told Burns-Marshall, Mauritius or Piper's forceps. So correct answer is D. Next question. A 32-year-old pregnant woman on examination found to have breech presentation with extended legs. This is called what breech? Frank breech presentation. Which maneuver should be performed in this woman for safe delivery of the legs? So what you will do for legs? To remove legs, P for popliteal, P for pinards, isn't it? So correct answer is C. Leopold's maneuver is what? To know the fetal grips. That is Leopold's. Burns-Marshall is for head. Tofsets is for shoulders. Next question. A 28-year-old primary gravida at 39 weeks of gestation is in active labor. The fetal head was delivered. Okay, active labor, head was delivered, but difficulty in delivering the fetal shoulders. Okay, shoulder difficulty is there. This is called what? Shoulder dystocia. McRoberts maneuver was performed. What is it done? Okay, we have not told about shoulder dystocia per se. So what is shoulder dystocia? After the delivery of the head, even after 1 minute, you are not able to deliver the fetal shoulders, or there is retraction of the head back into the perineum. Okay, head has come out, but it is getting stuck to the perineum back. That means that the shoulders have got stuck. Okay, so now see, it is like this. See, head has come out, okay, but the shoulders have got stuck. You're trying to pull, then shoulders have got stuck behind the pubic symphysis. It has not been able to come out, okay. So here you can see the shoulders are stuck behind the pubic symphysis. The more you pull, there will be more difficulty, more stuck behind the pubic symphysis. It will not come. It will only cause brachial plexus injury, okay. So that is not the technique that you use. So what are the things that you should do in case of a shoulder dystocia? First thing first, okay. So what you should do, you should feel the back of the baby and you should give a suprapubic pressure. So when you give a suprapubic pressure, what will happen? The bis acromial diameter will reduce, isn't it? You're giving pressure and you're causing compression of the shoulders, isn't it? So the bis acromial diameter will reduce and then the shoulder will be delivered out. First thing that you should do is give suprapubic pressure. Make sure that the flexion is there, not in opposite direction. Make sure you feel the back and in that direction you will give the suprapubic pressure and compress the bisacromial diameter and help in shoulder extraction. Even if that is not happening, first is suprapubic pressure. Second, even if that is not working out, then what you should do? You should ask the mother to hyperflex her knee hip joint and abduct her hip joint. Okay, that is called what? McRoberts maneuver. So they've asked you that only. McRoberts maneuver was performed. That means they have hyperflexed the limbs. Okay, hyperflexed at the hip joint and abducted the hip joint. This will make a space of at least 1 centimeter because of posterior rotation of the pubic symphysis. It will increase at least 1 to 1.5 centimeters of the space and help in the shoulders to come down. Okay, but you should never pull. Okay, never pull in case of a shoulder dystocia. Even if that case it is not working, then what you should do is Wood's maneuver or Wood's corkscrew technique. So what you will do in Wood's corkscrew technique, now this head is come out, shoulder is not coming out. So just like how you did in Lovset's maneuver to deliver the fetal shoulders, you will rotate it by 180 degrees. So the posterior shoulder which is down will come down below the pubic symphysis. Again rotate it back 180 degrees. Now the head whole shoulder will come out. This is called as Wood's corkscrew maneuver. Okay. These are the different techniques that you can use for a shoulder dystocia. So what they do in McRoberts maneuver is asked, hyperflex the mother's thigh. Yes, mother's thigh is hyperflexed, which will increase the pelvic space by 1 to 1.5 centimeters because of posterior rotation of the sacrum. Then hyperextend the mother's thigh. You can never extend the thighs, isn't it? There is no extension. Hyperflex the fetal head. No, flexion of fetal head would not be helping us. Lastly, apply suprapubic pressure. Yes, this you can do, but this is not what they are asking. They are asking what is McRoberts maneuver. So, the correct answer will be A. So, this ends your malpositions and malpresentations. I hope you have understood well and you will be able to answer in your exams. Thank you.